All right, let's get to the Cleveland Browns, our 2023 preview for the Cleveland Browns. Let's just call it like it is. The Browns remain a strange team to talk about.
Yeah.
Last year felt like a lost season in some ways. They were surprisingly good on offense with Jacoby Brissett. They were in the top 5 in DVOA during his starts as he kept Deshaun Watson's seat warm. Watson comes in and promptly puts up some of the worst quarterback numbers in the NFL. He had the same EPA per dropback as Zach Wilson in the games that he played. Part of it was that truly awful first game he played against Houston. And I think that's a performance that was compounded by Kevin Stefanski trying to keep things a little tighter to not ask him to do too much. But the Texans knew that. They were essentially daring them to push the ball down the field. And the Browns offense just wasn't in a place where they could do it. And it just created an absolute nightmare scenario. But even with that and the weather game, taking that into account, he still was not good. He didn't have a lot of feel for the position, which makes sense because he didn't play for 2 years. But the reason he didn't play for 2 years is that he was sued by 20 women for sexual misconduct. So this, it just becomes difficult to talk about because all of these different entanglements are involved here. There's a reason for why he might not have been good, but that reason is something that we should keep bringing up as we think about his development and where he is as a player. They were also extremely unlucky in close games last year. They've done a very good job building the rest of this roster. Like, there's so much talent here. So again, just untangling all of this stuff and then the really high expectations they probably have coming into this year. There's just a lot to separate when you discuss this team.
Yeah, it was obviously sitting out is going to, even if you usually just have an injury, that's usually when we're talking about this. And that's why it's hard. It's like, oh, you missed a lot of time. And then you think about, oh, why did you miss a lot of time? And then kind of gets you in a bad headspace. But watching him last year, even playing outside the weather, and you talked about maybe the tight first game, it was NFL live reps and just live sports is way different than practice. It's way different than drill work. It is a totally different animal. It's totally different speed. And it felt like that. It felt like the freshman going to his first camp in college and then going like, oh my God, or a rookie. I guess you could say that in the NFL, but really, I think that was my best comparison. It felt like that freshman getting his first real reps in college. And then just, these guys are moving quicker. Oh, what was my first read? Okay, I got to get to that. And it felt like he was just playing robotic. And I think when Deshaun Watson, when it was, a totally different lifetime ago in Houston, when he was playing well, it was because it was almost a freestyle type of play, like very loose type of play style, big game hunter down the field while also just ad-libbing all these throws. And it just never felt like that in Cleveland in that short time that he did start. And it always just felt dreary watching him, not just because of the weather, but it just felt like that watching that film and just how it felt watching it felt like it had a sepia tone on it. It just never felt right. And that's how it just always just feels talking about this team. It just doesn't always feel right.
Biggest question about the offense with all of that in mind as we step into 2023.
And in a schematic sense, it's how they continue to merge what Stefanski's passing game has been as a play caller with what Deshaun has been good at as a quarterback. Deshaun Watson has been as a quarterback. Stefanski in the passing game anyways, like their tight end looks, the extra offensive linemen, tighter formations, some quick game in there from the kind of this old, Kubiak background as well. But how they merge that more spready looks that Deshaun Watson was in Houston under Bill O'Brien, increasing things like how much they use empty, which is just all 5 receivers out or all 5 pass catchers out. Deshaun was an empty around 22% of the time. His last time, or the last 2 years with the Texans, it was half that last year. And when he was with the Browns, that's just one way.
I would expect that to be higher this year. I think part
already shown in preseason.
You're switching midstream because they wanted to be in a lot of empty last season, period, and especially when he took over because he was so good at it in Houston. Yes. But when you're not practicing any of it for the first 2/3 of the season because he's not practicing, you just don't get the reps at it. So now that they have an entire offseason, I expect that knob to be cranked up a little bit.
And they've already shown it in preseason. So that's what it's good to hear that because that they're aware of that because that's like Josh Allen. Like that's actually a good, maybe kind of stylistic comparison for Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson is you spread it all out and they use their legs when they go into creation mode. Everybody else is spread out. So you could do a lot more work and a lot more damage. Just we had the same discussion about Lamar. Also continuing another stat that I brought up with Joe Burrow is also increasing the amount of RPOs. Deshaun Watson, the last time his full season in 2020, they were ranked top 5 in RPO dropbacks. Last year, the Browns were second to last in RPO dropbacks. And again, this is just ways to quick hitters, a little bit of an easy buttons, but also it spreads it out. Spreads it out, lets him make decisions and kind of put the ball in his hands to make those decisions. So those are just things I want to see in the merging of with the run game. Those are the next steps for this offense.
It's the biggest question. Other than is he just bad now?
Is he just bad? Right.
Is last year a product of rust, or is this a sign of what's to come? I think that's one of the biggest questions.
Right.
But the what you're talking about schematically, the merging of those two worlds is absolutely the biggest question. So the RPOs, partially a product of Brissett, according to the Pro Football Reference numbers, which we've talked about this. The RPO numbers are a little messy all over the place.
Yeah.
But Pro Football Reference, Brissett had 1 a game, essentially. Watson had 3. So they used more of them when Watson took over a quarterback, and I expect that number to continue to increase. The under center versus shotgun question. Mm-hmm. So weeks 1 through 12 last year, they were under center on 51.7% of early downs. This is the 7th highest rate in the league. Weeks 13 to 18, when he was starting, it was 44%. So a 7 to 8 percentage point drop. They went down to 9th in the NFL. I assume that will continue to change. There are so many benefits to living in the gun with him at quarterback. What you can do with the quarterback run game. Now you're going with this team that is a fantastic offensive line that has run the shit out of the ball for the last 5 years or 3 years since Stefanski's got there. Now you can leave guys unblocked.
Yeah. I was going to say with no quarterback run game involved either. Those are just straight running back runs still.
And they can run everything because when I was there and we're talking to people about this. When they did their install in year 1, when Stefanski was there, they installed 0 gap scheme runs. Zero. They did not install a play in the summer with a pulling guard. 0.
That's
they get
weird.
They get into the season and they realize the guards that they have, and they have Bill Callahan, and they're like, oh shit. Yeah. And then they start to get into them. And now they have this super varied run game where they're doing a little bit of everything. And when you can live in 11 personnel and in the shotgun, and now you can change the math with the quarterback, there's so many different things that you can do. The RPOs that you can use off of them. There's an entire world of NFL offense now available to them because this guy is their quarterback in theory, the skill set that he should provide them. And so I assume they're going to try to explore that world as much as they can, but you still want to maintain some of the benefits that the under center offense gives you.
Yes.
Because it changes defenses. When you're under center on first down, there are literal checks that defenses have where they'll go single high against under center. Mm-hmm. So can you use that as a way to throw the ball now rather than having to use it simply as a way to run the ball because you have no other version of offense? So I think juggling all of that stuff together and figuring out what benefits can we take from the old world as we step into the new world while making sure you're good enough at all of it. I think that becomes the biggest challenge. Not whether you can be good at one thing or good at the other. It's that we only have so much practice time and we only have so many different reps to really hone in on this stuff. Don't spread yourself too thin where you become a jack of all trades and a master of none, especially with the run concepts. Yep. I think that becomes now the biggest challenge for them because so much is on the table and the menu is so large. Don't get overwhelmed by that.
It's a classic when you got the usually it's a new regime, new offensive coordinator, new head coach, new quarterback. And then you could see them always trying to blend their ideas. That's the thing is we've talked about this. Stefanski has experience in various offenses. Then you got Bill Callahan as offensive line coach. And now you got Deshaun coming in. So saying all that, why all of this sounds good on paper. And then we just talked about this with the Bengals. What was the evolution of their offense? Not being so siloed, not being like, we're in this formation. We do this. We do this formation. Yes, some of those plays can work, but over time, or when you face better units, better defensive units, they tee off on that. Okay, like you said, they are under center. We're in a single high. But not only that, guys go, oh, they're under center and they're in this formation. You got linebackers shooting gaps. You got defensive linemen teeing off. Safeties playing low. There's that human element when you become predictable. So that's kind of just a way to kind of tie a bow on this is that getting to what some of the runs they did last year. I remember the Carolina game, the variety that you're talking about in the run game. Usually it's easier out of a zone to do some of that play action stuff, but you can do a lot of fun stuff with guys pulling to trap the guard or get the guard to come, or I'm sorry, the linebacker to come down, to get the safety to come down and all that. So having a whole offseason to work on this, like you said, trying to do that midstream is really hard, but I'm curious what they get to in this after a whole offseason, because even in the first preseason game, This team trotted out 0-2 and 0-3 personnel. And what that is 2 tight ends and 3 tight ends, no running backs, and either 3 receivers or 2 receivers. So they just trot that out 3 times on the first drive, first play of the game. They had 2 tight ends and 3 wide receivers, and they had Elijah Moore, the receiver, in the backfield, and then they motioned to empty.
You're going to see some of that weird junk a lot,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So it was like, okay, all right. So you guys are getting a little creative. Okay, that's good to see. When you're doing that the first play of the first preseason game, and also I kind of laughed because I'm sure whoever plays them in week 1 is going, God dang it, because now they have to draw. Is it the Bengals?
Yeah,
the draw.
Lou Anarumo's in for it when it comes to the different things that he's going to have to account for compared to what this team was last year.
This team now.
So the gun versus shotgun thing, the last thing I want to mention is that some people are thinking, oh, well, Nick Chubb is an under center runner. Like that's where we want to use him.
Good from the gun.
He had a higher success rate and EPA for carry out of the gun last year than he had under center. And under the gun, they also face much, much lighter boxes. And he has no preference. Some backs like one or the other. Yep. He does not have a preference. This is something that's been communicated. It's been dialogue both ways. He does not mind kind of moving between these worlds. So I think that being comfortable using your best player in the ways that you've used him consistently, that's important. They are not going to forget that he's on the team.
It used to be, was the guy needed a lead back, needed a fullback, or if they're a single back runner. That used to be the big difference. Are we a fullback runner or a single back runner? Now it's under center or gun is the difference now with the run games. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that now you still have the scheme shots off play action that you want to take. And because it's a layup for your quarterback in terms of the mental processing, you can get some explosive plays off of it against certain looks. But now it doesn't have to become your entire passing offense, which it did at times during this regime. So again, talk about it. They still have top tier offensive line, one of the best in the league front to back. Ethan Pochich was really good for them at center last year. He's back now. And some of the ancillary pieces that they added, I find interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Elijah Moore comes in as a skill set they did not have last year. Think about the physical skill sets they had at receiver last season. It's Amari Cooper, who's like a big bodied route runner. Okay. That is what he is. I think Amari Cooper's awesome, but he is not an explosive yards after catch sort of player. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's just a big body straight line guy. Mm-hmm. Those are the 2 receivers that they had last year. And even the year before that, it's Jarvis Landry, who doesn't have that skill set. So the juice,
no, he does not.
The juice has been missing from this offense at those spots. Elijah Moore gives you a specific skill set, and then Marquise Goodwin comes in and is now your field stretcher. Really just never quite worked out with Anthony Schwartz. And so I think Marquise Goodwin hopefully comes in and gives them that element. And then the last one, I really like is
Cedric
Jordan
Tillman.
Akins.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Cedric Tillman.
Cedric Tillman has obviously flashed in the preseason, but Jordan Akins, who is
you're a Jordan Akins guy. Yeah,
I think Jordan Akins is like a real pass catcher.
Yeah,
he is a real pass catcher, and so they bring him in now, and I think that gives them. They like Harrison Bryant as like a piece within the offense, but there are certain kind of scheme throws to Harrison Bryant where there was meat on the bone, and I think that Jordan Akins hopefully gives them a little bit more. Where some of those targets that went to Bryant now have just a little bit more pop to them if they give them to Jordan Akins.
And is Jordan Akins the pumpkin to Deshaun Watson's Seabiscuit? He is. Yeah, because it's a familiar face. You know, so he's just going to calm down. He's like, remember you? Okay, I remember that face. That's the exact same thing. He's the pumpkin to Seabiscuit for the quarterback. And
the last thing I want to mention, you combine all of this, the personnel, the meshing of these worlds, with what I believe is an exceptional offensive football coach. And there's been a lot of stuff to distract from that recently, and I understand that. In non-Deshaun Watson games, since Kevin Stefanski took over as the Browns head coach, they are 7th in EPA per play.
And who was the quarterback for majority of those games?
Baker Mayfield, who is on his 3rd team since he left the Browns.
Yep.
So this is mostly a question of what they're going to get out of the quarterback, but I think everything else is positioned for them to be very good on that side of the ball. All right.
He just has to be average. That's seriously. They're set up pretty well.
Biggest question about the defense for you, the Cleveland Browns defense.
Oh my God. How far back is Jim Schwartz going to pin the pass rushers' ears? Like, I think that's the question I'm going to go with. But I don't know if I have a question. I really want to just see how much he unlocks the front, really more than anything. I just want to see these guys go. I'm very, very excited about not only what Myles Garrett's going to look like, or with Jim Schwartz, but it's also all the other pieces that they added up front. I think it's going to be really, really an exceptional unit, and one I get more excited about. I think we talked about him God, months and months ago. It might have been when we did when we're talking about the coordinators or something, but they've like added pieces to this defense since that discussion. You know, Zadarius Smith, they've added Shelby Harris, who are all these guys that on top of Dalvin Tomlinson and Ogbo Okoronkwo, like, wow, that's a totally
It's the most
remade
improved
defense.
unit in the NFL.
Yeah.
The Browns defensive line.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
I
agree with
feel
that.
very comfortable saying that because it was
would
a
agree with that.
decided weakness last year.
It was embarrassing.
Decided weakness.
With
They
Myles
were
Garrett.
27th in run defense success rate, 28th in run defense DVOA. They finished 22nd in pressure rate last year with Myles Garrett on the team.
Myles Garrett.
22nd. So you have all of these different additions that they've made, and beyond the personnel. When Kevin Stefanski got hired, they brought in Joe Woods, and I think it was with the hope of bringing that Niner style of defense with them. Joe was the assistant. He was the passing game coordinator, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They brought the assistant defensive line coach from the Niners over. They wanted that attacking front. And I don't think they ever really got it. That mindset that Chris Kasurik gets those guys to play with, that other teams have been able to tack into. I think that it was always kind of a half measure, the style that they were playing. Yeah. And you have to be fully committed to playing that way or you're not. You can't do it halfway. And I think it got them in trouble. So what they did this offseason, along with bringing in Jim Schwartz, Chris Kasurik came from Jim Schwartz's coaching tree.
Yeah.
Chris Kasurik was the defensive line coach from the Lions.
Yeah.
That wide nine attacking front, Jim Washburn, is the guy who kind of popularized that in the NFL. He was with the Titans when Jim Schwartz was there. Kyle Vanden Bosch, you remember those teams? So in order to get that style of defense, Jim Washburn is a consultant on this team. They literally are going straight to the source to try to now get this version of that defense. Funny. So along with all the personnel improvements, they're trying to finally get that mindset that they wanted to get when they initially made this hire. And I think that with Jim Schwartz, who brings a different level of energy, and with some of the other tweaks that they've made, along with the personnel improvements, they might finally be able to tap into that.
That's it. That's what he brings. It is a mindset. It's we own the team. We own every week. We're going to kick your ass every week. You know what we're going to do, but it doesn't matter because we're going to attack you. And I think they have the horses to do it. That's what's cool. It's not just like, oh, we might get something out of this guy. I mean, just on rundowns like that. I'm glad he brought up the run stats because it was embarrassing watching them defend the run several weeks last year. It was like they couldn't stop anybody. And just adding the beef like Dalvin Tomlinson, but then Shelby Harris as well in the interior. Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett are on the end spots. Like, okay, that's a nice starting unit. But then
on third down,
this is it. This is
Z bumps in. You bring in Okonkwo, and now we're cooking.
Yes, and you can even throw in Mo Hurst in there, who's having a nice preseason. But it's like, holy crap! So now you got this. They got serious heat, and then they got Jim Schwartz just whispering into their ear. It's like the Draymond Green talking to Kevin Durant video. It's like, he's like just hyping him up. Like,
that's exactly what they're betting on, by the way.
Yes.
That's exactly what they're betting on.
I'm fired up, man. When the starting with free agency, I was like, I see what you guys are doing. This is cool. But this is the trickle down that we're excited about the pass rushers, but having that beef in the middle and keeping the linebackers clean, a guy like JOK, holy crap, he's going to be free to just wreak havoc all over the place and use his speed because he's going to keep clean. He's going to stay clean. And that's what's going to be really great. Some people said he had a disappointing year last year. You could see the flashes. It was just, he had a guy on him right away. He had a guard.
They were a mess.
Yeah. And then Juan, I know you like that signing as well. I do too.
It's the type of signing I like in free agency. You sign a safety to an $8 million a year deal, so you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yep.
And I think he's the exact type of guy that you should hunt for in those spots.
Yes.
So the way that they've built the defense, the way that they've added depth, the corners are good. And then the stylistic shift is going to be interesting to watch. Yeah. Because this is not a team that played a lot of man last year. They're going to play a lot of man now. Jim Schwartz, the last time he was a defensive coordinator, the Eagles ran man coverage 38% of the time on early downs. By the way, here's what you need to know about. This is all you need to know about the shift that's happened in the NFL over the last 3 years. That rate, 38% man coverage on early downs, was the fourth highest rate in the league.
Which would be way up there.
Last year, no one was above 28. No one in the league. So that's how much things have changed across the NFL over the last 3 years. And that is my biggest question. People don't live that way anymore. So they're going to be in a lot more single high looks where they're playing a lot of cover one, a lot of cover three, the same way that Jim Schwartz always has, with cover two as the changeup, same as Dan Quinn. But Dan Quinn has figured out the right settings on all of those for 2023 NFL defense. Can Jim Schwartz do that? That becomes my biggest question with them in the defense schematically.
Oh yeah. And sure enough, preseason, it was cover three. They had one play. It was actually pretty funny. I just had to mention this. It was against the Eagles. I might have been the first play or second play of the game, and the Eagles were backed up, and it was single high, like cover three look. Might have been man, but the safety was no lie, like 7 yards from the line of scrimmage. So it looked like Buddy Ryan ball, but they weren't blitzing. But it was just 9 guys were literally in the box. This is the first play. I should tweet it, but it was like, good to have you back, Jim. Good day. You know his mindset's going to be. I'm glad you're bringing it up though, because that is such a stylistic shift. What they did with the Titans last year, I'm curious if there's going to be some, because they merged some ideas. But
I wouldn't
when he was consulting with the Titans, no, he's just back.
I wouldn't bet on it.
I love it. I love when guys at least have identities to just go against the meta. I like that though.
The corners, in theory, should be able to hold up in this world.
Yeah.
Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson on the outside, and then Newsome on the inside. That should be a trio that can play this level of man coverage and do what's asked of them. That's why you're paying Denzel Ward all that money. So I don't think it's a huge shift. And up front, again, now it's nothing changes. You're just becoming an even more exaggerated version of what you always wanted to be. And I think that was part of the reason of hiring Jim Schwartz, is that the players that we already have, the linchpin pieces, Ward, Garrett, nothing has to change for them. They can hopefully become even better versions of themselves within this style of defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a high on Martin Emerson, by the way. I'm not going to put him as my breakout candidate, but I wanted to. Barnwell kind of stole my line. Not really. I just was shocked. I read his article like last week, and I was like, oh, Martin Emerson, that's a good name. And that's like maybe kind of like in my head about it, but big body guy, which matched perfectly for that division. Mm-hmm. Just think who he's going to play with the Bengals or even George Pickens with the Steelers. So I think he's going to be a good number 2, but I do want to give him a shout out too.
X factor for the Browns. I don't even think we have to talk about it.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson. quarter billion dollar man.
Yeah, they gave him $250 million fully guaranteed, and if he's not a star quarterback, none of the rest of this matters. If he's not a top half of the league quarterback, none of the rest of this matters.
Nope.
They've built every other aspect of the roster such that this team is ready to compete. This is what they've been building towards. Yeah, like this version of the team is what they've been building towards.
Absolutely.
And outside of the quarterback, again, it's the entanglements here. I want to credit the job that they've done building the rest of this roster, while also acknowledging that I don't want to credit what they've done at the quarterback position. Yes. So it's important.
Again, it's hard. Oh, I know. Even me talking about the offense, I go straight into scheme, because it's just like, at least I could turn my brain off and just go into auto mode, because it's tough. It's really tough, guys.
Breakout player for the Browns. Who you got?
Yeah, I want to do Emerson, but I'm going Ogbo Okoronkwo. If anyone that's listened to this Ogbo Okoronkwo, anybody that's listened to this show knows I really like this guy. I have tabbed him the last 2 free agency classes as the Millsap doctrine candidate, where lower usage guys just continue to have good rates as they get more usage, and couldn't have gone to a better situation. So I'm very, very excited. This guy on a per snap basis has been one of the best pass rushers in the league. Not elite, but very good tier, I would say. But he had a better pressure rate last year than Brian Burns and Max Crosby. Like this guy, and he gets his hands on throws. And honestly, if you watch that first preseason game, he was like, I'm earning this contract. He dominated on that first drive. I actually
they're playing with an edge. When I was at practice with the Eagles, that group is playing with an edge the exact way that they want them to. And he's one of those guys.
And oh my God. And honestly, he's like, it was Darius Smith and Myles Garrett and him, man, I think like he's going to be really affecting a lot of games outside just underlying stats. He's going to have some moments where he just really dominates. I'm excited to watch him this year.
It's going to be a fun group to watch, that front in general. Yeah. I'm going with Elijah Moore. I think he is more important to their plans and their evolution on offense than it might seem from the outside. A player like him, age, price, skill set, was a huge priority for their off-season plans, and I think that they nailed it. I think he might be like the best possible outcome for what they were searching for this skill set within their offense.
Yeah,
the way they use him in motion, the juice that he gives them. We talked about all of it. I think that he's going to really be a big part of who they are this season.
Yeah. I'm telling you, that first drive, they got him 3 different looks. Once in the backfield, once motioning him out of the backfield to run a choice route, and then the third one was a fake to him to run a screen. So that first drive that he was in there, it's like, yeah, they have plans for Elijah Moore. And got to remember, him at Ole Miss, that's how Lane Kiffin used him. It was like every touch was going to him, handoff, underneath throws, screens down the field. He can do it all. He's a fun player. So
and they don't mind using him. He's an outside receiver. Just because he's small doesn't mean he's not an outside receiver. When they're in 12 personnel, it's him and Amari Cooper and the couple tight ends that they got. It's a good group of skill position
Him
players.
and Amari have great synergy as a Z and a slot guy. They can go in and out together. I really like those two, and that's why I hope Tillman can be what I think, because he's the perfect kind of X for those two. So it could be a fun group.
What is success for the 2023 Browns?
First off, it's making sure you get above average play of Deshaun Watson, and then secondly, it's make the playoffs. And I think those are the two goals. That's got to be it.
Yeah, similar line of thinking. They have to make the playoffs. Have to. There's real urgency, I think, from ownership. They've been open about it. When the moment camp opened, I think that Jimmy has them essentially said, we don't have to say what the expectations are. You know what they are, and I think that's real. So we'll see what happens.